We are the non-profits. Hello, all you wonderful people in YouTube land. I hope to find you all well, or as well as can be expected in this COVID-ridden holiday season. And with that, here comes the disclaimer. The Non-Profits is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government and the promotion of positive atheism. If you would like what we do, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thenonprofits. Tell us what you like, what you don't like in the comments. Please use the comments in the YouTube. It is a wasteland there. It is barren. We need to promote some or get some conversations going. It's a great place to continue the conversation about the things we're going to bring up today.
Yeah.
You can also communicate with us by email at non-profits@atheist-community.org. Like and subscribe, of course, on the YouTube. And you can also join us on the Atheist Community of Discord. That's tiny.cc/ACA Discord. You can also join our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/nonprofitlive. Jena, Kurt, how are you?
Doing well.
Yeah?
Doing all right. I mean, life is what it is right now. The struggle continues for everybody, finding things to do and ways to be happy, but life moves on, and so do we.
Yeah. But yeah, you're still looking pretty festive. I like your Christmas tree. You decorate well.
Yeah, you know, it's all fake. I'm actually using a green screen. It's actually a little ironic because I'm not really the festive type, but I thought, hey, this is like the Christmas episode. I should do something. If I have the green screen, I might as well. My actual fake Christmas tree that my wife and I put up is not actually up yet. So we're going to be doing that probably over the weekend. Maybe.
Wow. Yeah, really.
We've been busy.
Jena, have you been having anything keeping you busy? Anything fun?
I mean, besides work, well, a fun thing is I decided to re-listen to Candace Gorham's The Ebony Exodus Project book. I just, it's a lot of telling of stories of different ladies, African-American women telling their stories of deconversion. So it's just inspiring to just revisit all that again. So cool. I know recently I just talked to one of our fellow co-hosts of the nonprofits, Neil, about my story. So just revisiting all that, just knowing of the shared experiences I can relate to through these women. It's fun for me. I like diving into those journeys and just identifying and relating to that. So that's been what I've been doing in my spare time.
Nice. Yeah, I just binged on the first 3 episodes of the latest Expanse season 5, episodes 1, 2, and 3 just dropped yesterday. This was the first time I joined a Zoom meeting with a bunch of fans of the show. The executive producer of visual effects was there. A couple graphic artists was in the Zoom chat. I was really fanboying out on all the people that were involved in the production, giving insights. It was really cool.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, with that, let's get to the meat of this. We've got 3 topics to go over and 1 looking back. The topics are the first one is from the Friendly Atheist, Hemant Mehta, from friendlyatheists.patheos.com. There are now more atheists in the state and federal office than ever before. We have an article from the American United for the Separation of Church and State. Americans United denounces the Trump administration's rule that allows federal contracts to use religion to discriminate against workers. And our third article comes from The Guardian. Religious intolerance, quote, is bigger cause of prejudice than race, unquote. And that's from a report from The Guardian about a scientific study that just came out. Well, we'll get more into that in a little bit. But so first off, we're going to be looking at non-religious representation in government. Kurt, could you fill us in a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I'm really a little bit excited to talk about this one. Less so for the actual content, which is exciting in and of itself, but just that it's a little more of an uplifting article. We don't talk about a lot of those on this show, and just in the news
That's
in
true.
general, we get a lot of negativity, especially today. There's COVID, there's elections and uncertainty and people losing their jobs, and there's just so much that seems to be going wrong this year. And
Yeah.
I'm really happy that A, this is happening, and B, that we get to talk about it because it seems like something's going right. So what we're seeing is, obviously, we just had a lot of elections going on in the last couple of months, a lot of results coming in, and we're seeing a rise in non-religious representation in government, which is great news as far as the separation of religion and government is concerned. We're up to 10 non-religious state senators. That is up from 7 in 2018. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot. You're like, oh, it's just 3 more. What is that? But if you think about it, 7 to 10, that's a little more than a 40% increase. And that's actually pretty big. If hopefully we keep the trend going, hopefully we actually pick up steam. But if we get another 40% in 2 years, we'll be up to 14, and then the numbers will keep on getting bigger, which is very exciting. We're also up to 47 non-religious state representatives. The article actually says 45, but I did look into it a little bit. John Rosenthal of Texas and Ashley Matthews of Utah have since won their races.
Oh, nice.
And should be sworn in at some point if they haven't been already. So that, I think that's pretty awesome. I'm really excited to see this happening. I'm really excited to see more people representing a wider demographic of viewpoints.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys. I don't think that every single person in office should be an atheist. I think that that would, in and of itself, signify a society that just isn't equitable. But I do think that, especially given the rise in non-religious folk in the last decade, several decades, whatever it is, we do need more representation on that side of things. We're still working hard on that at the federal level, but just seeing numbers increase anywhere is great.
Yeah, we're definitely under the 1/3 that supposedly the nuns have, far as representation goes. But,
Right.
And just a reminder, that is the NONES, not the
yes,
Christian nuns.
yes, we're not talking about big white hats. But we are talking about the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, right? These are all Democrats, but all of these people that we're talking about that are in these federal offices are part of this caucus. What can one of you tell me a little bit more about what the Congressional Free Thought Caucus is, or who are some of its members? I got a little bit on that as well.
Well, I'll just mention, and then I know you guys dug a little bit into the members, but the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, it's a membership organization in the U.S. House. There are a lot of membership organizations in there, and they have 4 major, not tenets, but 4 sort of guiding principles, I guess. And that is to promote public policy formed on the basis of reasons, science, and moral values, protect the secular character of our government by adhering to the strict constitutional principle of the separation of church and state, to oppose discrimination against atheists, agnostics, humanists, seekers, religious and non-religious persons, and to champion the value of freedom of thought and conscience worldwide, and to provide a forum for members of Congress to discuss their moral frameworks, ethical values, and personal religious journeys. That's all listed straight from, I believe it was secular.org, where they kind of have a big splash page about them. But I mean, it sounds great. There are 14 members right now of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus. Is that right?
Yeah.
Roughly, if I leave, yeah.
And hopefully that continues to grow. Of course, we want more and more people to be involved with science, reason, logic, and the whole idea of a secular government system as opposed to one based in any way on religion.
Cool.
Excellent.
Jena,
I know.
You were gonna talk about Jerry.
Yes, exactly. He's no stranger to the House of Representatives, actually. Jerry McNerney, he's a Democrat from California, my state. Your state also, Kurt. Sorry about that. Very notable in a couple of latest legislative moves that he has done. One in particular, known as the McNerney Bill. This was signed into law by President Obama back in 2010. This improved care for returning service members that experienced, during combat traumatic brain injury, or also known as TBI. So this established evaluation protocols and panels which assess, various veteran VA hospitals and assess their ways of treating these particular patients with traumatic brain injuries. And of course, upon those assessments, provided any type of recommendation on improvements if needed. One such assessment brought about the resignation of the VA secretary at the time, known as Eric Shinsky. Excuse me. He was appointed under the Obama administration back in 2014. So this is involving a VA scandal in which I quote this from a particular article I'm referencing in regards to this VA scandal in 2014. Substandard care and false medical records were uncovered involving treatment and care of a number of veterans. So he wasn't directly at fault for the type of false documentation and issues regarding patient care, but he just took the blame for it and took responsibility because this happened, in a sense, under his watch. So notably, I guess you can say, without this type of bill proposed and created by McNerney, and also and indeed signed into law by Obama, we wouldn't have had this type of investigation, and we would have sought out or discovered these incidences that led to, discovering ill practices that were made towards veterans. Another reference bill I will note is one particular involving the United States Secretary of Energy to prepare a report on the effects of thermal insulation, which has to do with various on both energy consumption and systems that provide potable water means to federal buildings. So at that time, they were trying to conduct analysis-based evidence to point out essential drive-ups to drive up efficiency, I should say, that is backed by science-based efforts. So which Kurt pointed out, this pretty much aligns with what the CFC stands for, to provide legislation that's not only backed by science, backed by hard evidence, to not only improve public policy, but also, support the support veterans, support the underprivileged, that can have these congressional members put in place these bills that can, drive up the improvements that we need. So I think, just a reflection of these two bills is pretty astounding.
Yeah. I've looked into a representative from my home state, Washington, and that was Representative Jahi Paul.
She's gone up in the world.
Let me go back to even before she became a public figure or a public representative. She was she created and chaired One America, which she made that after the 2001 September 11 attacks. It's a immigrancy advocacy group. Because there was at that time a huge amount of backlash against brown people because of September 11th, brown people from all over the world.
Right. Yeah.
Because during that time, there was the Bush administration was trying to deport over 4,000 Somalis, a lot of whom were refugees from the United States, and Pramila and her One America was able to successfully sue the Bush administration, preventing the deportation of those people. So, and for those of you who don't know, during that time, Somali was battled in a civil war. Lots of warfare going on. So
Indeed, yes.
best not to go back there. She was elected into the U.S. House of Representatives in 2016 and kept her seat in 2020. She's the senior whip of the Democratic Caucus, co-sponsor of the College for All Act, co-sponsored with the Representative Sanders, an independent from Vermont. And this bill, which did not get passed into law under the Bush administration, the Trump administration, was set to make public colleges and universities tuition free for most families in the U.S. to try to promote education through higher education to be available for all. She's introduced legislation affirming that all people have the rights to let me back up a little bit. She also co-chairs the United for Climate and Environment Justice, United for Climate and Environment Justice Task Force. This task force has introduced legislation affirming that all people have a right to clean air, clean water, and to sustainably preservation of our natural environment. I don't understand how we have to have a caucus of less than half that are pushing these things. I don't see why everyone is not on board on things like that. However, that's the world we live in currently.
I mean, less than half is it's a little bit of an understatement, right? It's 14 members out of 435 seats. Every single one is a Democrat, not a single Republican in the caucus. And actually, for that matter, just in federal and state office in general, it seems like there is not a single openly non-religious Republican anywhere, which is maybe a little bit interesting. I completely agree, though. It's crazy that for simple things like, hey, science, let's believe science, our best tools to date, that we have to have a caucus dedicated to that.
Yeah. And in fact, I misspoke, because the caucus that I was thinking of that has 94 members is another one that she is co-chair of, which is the Congressional Progressive Caucus. It's the largest caucus of the Democratic Party. In the Democratic Party, this is an ideological caucus, and that is and she was now reelected as chair of that said caucus for the upcoming 2021 season.
So, Malty, if I may, I apologize. To reference back to your previous statement, you said less than that within that caucus of 94 members voted for this particular legislation?
No. What I was saying was that there is 200. I don't have the number right in front of me. 240 some Democrats in the House.
Okay.
And the largest ideological caucus in the Democratic Party is the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which has 94 members.
So I mean, let's take a little step back, because we've obviously got some really interesting members of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus who have done a lot of really great stuff throughout their careers, some really admirable stuff. Some of them would probably describe themselves maybe not as atheists, but at the very least as humanists, free thinkers, maybe non-religious, just because I know that especially in the United States, atheist can be a little bit of a taboo word sometimes and doesn't necessarily lead to a lot of votes, and we'll hit on that later. But I mean, what does it really mean that we're getting more representation here? What does that do for us? Why do we care about that so much? Because it's great that it's happening. I think a lot of people would applaud it, but what can it help to change? Where are we going from here?
So I think one pretty obvious thing is that you're removing the assumption that whatever type of policy, like faith-based policy, that drives a particular legislation will be removed. That the requirement that a particular congressperson will enact their type of whatever legislation they're trying to pass without the backing of some type of religious following that they have. So when you remove that aspect and just have the clear focus of just applying what evidence shows, what statistics shows, science-based findings show, in order to improve on whatever you're trying to improve based on the bill that you're trying to convey, I think that helps drive, and it just, for me, at least, is a bit more appealing than just having say, oh, I'm trying to enact this particular bill because, per the Bible or per my faith, this is something that should be good for all people. So you're, in a sense, entrenching upon other people's rights because you're applying your own faith to something that not everyone agrees with. So I think that is the benefit of having these free thought, free thinker congressional persons to, be more be more fluent, be more increase, more of them and more representation of them. And it's great that we have that particular caucus and increasing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I see from I think it's very similar as the Secular Coalition for America. Um, in their mission statement is to increase the visibility and respect of non-theistic viewpoints in the United States and strengthen our secular character of our government. I think the U.S. has done really well with a strong separation of church and state. I believe in the last 4 years, if not longer, there's been an erosion of that separation, and it has not led to an improvement of the quality of life for the majority of Americans or the world at large.
Right.
So, yeah, bringing back the idea that fact-based legislation is important and is useful is something that I really am looking forward to seeing more work done by the Free Thought Caucus.
And this actually drives a particular question that I have, but in referencing this article, I just want to point out that it is important to note that just because a legislative official happens to be non-religious does not mean that they are without faults, right?
No.
I think it just further demonstrates even non-religious public representation can and has been shown to be beneficial in progressing our society, affirming public policy, and that works for not just individuals but for the group as a whole, and reassuring that the public that measures these individuals will hold up to the same moral values as any religious person would, and perhaps even better than one of a faith-based background, right? It's an effort to increase trust and to also normalize the fact that non-believers exist. We're not the evil, stereotypical portrayal of what people think atheists
The
are.
baby eaters.
Right. Right. I haven't seen any policy legislation passed for that. So, I mean, there goes that.
I will say it is worth noting that this is not an atheist movement. This is not something that is
Certainly.
built on the back of atheism or trying to tear religion down. Just remember that the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, it's trying to promote reason, science, morality, separation of church and government, which is certainly aligning with us at the Atheist Community of Austin, but it's not an atheist movement specifically. The American Humanist Association was part of it's one of the groups that helped develop this caucus, helped establish this caucus. And I mean, they are I don't actually know how many of them would say that they're atheists, but humanism is not exclusively atheism. I think that a lot of people who are Christian or Muslim or of any religious faith could reasonably call themselves humanist if they align with the values, and a lot of
Certainly.
the time they do.
A lot of
Mhm.
them do. Yeah. And I think that the promotion of secular humanism is what the Free Thought Caucus is all about. You bet. Not necessarily atheism. Um, when I see the breadth and width that these representatives are going to try to understand their constituents. When I look at the caucus, more of the caucuses that Pramala is a part of, she's a member of the LGBTQ caucus, the
Mhm.
equality, the women's caucus, the pro-choice caucus, the Congressional Hispanic caucus, the Hunger caucus, caucuses for the arts, humanities, small brewers, outdoor recreation, artificial intelligence. When you have someone who is very focused on one aspect of their community, that being the religious aspect, I
Mhm.
don't know that it lends to being able to hear the people from other parts of the community that you're trying to represent that might have different opinions of yours about certain things like
Yeah.
marriage, equality, and
Yes. And
rights.
I certainly agree with that, Malty. And, that just begs the question of why are religious politicians seemingly more trusting or more trustworthy than non-religious ones are? And I think it has to do with a disassociation of, character traits or certain traits that, most people would identify when they're, voting for a particular person to represent them in office. Such things like, there are unfair associations of immoral behavior that are aligned with atheism. That's an unfair association. Cultural grouping, shared beliefs in the same deity, that's an automatic attraction. So, for instance, if it's almost it's almost pretty common, especially within my family and within the church that they attend, that the direct association is that, okay, they are my skin color, they are of my same faith, therefore they know what my feelings are and they have my benefits and my understanding at heart. So you automatically have that advantage of association because of faith, and because we have this strong tie of religion in our country. It's hard to break that, and it's hard to become the intermediary of saying, hey, I can be just as good as a representative for you for these things, without the adage of religion. But of course, with religion comes certain policies and certain ideas people are more in favor of. And then, of
Mm,
course, that just further drives the associations of what I guess, take for example, the Christian faith, further drives those trait associations like restrictive sexuality, uh, family, not being so impulsive, not being aggressive. But you'd be surprised that you learn also that most non-believers would kind of associate and look for that even in faith-based politicians too. So I
mm,
think it just astounds me with what you just said, that having more trust in these religious politicians just seems to discourage everyone else as a whole, because like you said, they align to just one focus instead of broadly thinking of the society as a whole.
yeah, and that can lead to some discrimination, or like you were saying, if you have these people are similar to me, so I'm going to give them preferential treatment, or say maybe if I'm looking to hire someone out, maybe I would be more attracted to have them be of the same faith as me. which kind of leads us into our second article. Jena, did you want to?
Certainly. Sorry about that. So with
I
this,
thought we lost you there for a second.
I I thought I lost myself. Trust me.
Uh,
So with this reference to the second article, this is in regards to the Department of Labor on finalizing a rule based on religious discrimination against employees that don't identify with their employer's faith. So just pulling back from the American United's article, it pretty much states, and I quote, that they're trying to constitute a legislation of adding a particular rule to broaden religious freedoms for employers or federal contractors that want to hire workers into their groups. So therefore, that means that they're making it allowable for these employers to either accept or deny a person that wants to apply for that job solely based on the fact that they don't represent or identify with that employer's faith. And that's discriminatory. We have laws in place, or we should have laws in place that combat that. So this particular article is referencing that this particular last final rule will take place at least 2 weeks before the current administration is out of office. So, the hope is that with the new administration, that they will not overlook this and hopefully overturn this type of final rule and just totally be against it, because it is a blatant disregard of, LGBT community, people that want to seek employment, people that obviously don't identify with their employer's faith, obviously for non-believers that don't identify with any faith. So you're just writing off people, and to, take more assault, take more offense to this adage is that we've already experienced so many people losing their jobs within this year because of the pandemic. So this only increases the unemployment of more and more people because they can't secure a job solely because of their faith or non-faith.
And I think it's worth noting that this isn't a law that had to be run through Congress. There's already rules for religious exemptions, right? And it just kind of how they work, or I should say, there are already laws for how those work.
This was
As
an
I
executive order then?
understand it, what was that?
This was an executive order then?
It wasn't an executive order. I don't fully, admittedly, I don't fully have a great understanding of the exact terminology of what a rule is, but what it seems like is that it's essentially the administration saying, hey, this is how you should interpret this particular passage. It's not changing a law, but it may potentially be going in the face of tradition or oh, I just lost the word. Precedent. That's the word. It could be going in the face of precedent, or it could just be, wiggling a little bit. In this case, it is specifically about expanding the religious exemption. So historically, the religious exemptions have been very narrowly scoped. They've only been applicable to nonprofit religious organizations. And I mean, in a sense, that makes sense. If you are a Christian organization, you are nonprofit, you're not making money off of this. This is a scenario where, hey, maybe your mission wouldn't be served by somebody who doesn't share your faith. I can't say that I necessarily agree with it, but I can understand it. I guess it makes sense. Now, with this new rule, it looks like for-profit organizations may actually qualify for this, and it's kind of changing how the interpretation works entirely. Just a direct quote from the article here. It directs the agency to take a broad interpretation of the religious exemption, even though the exemption is supposed to be narrow. This could embolden federal contractors to cite religion in order to fire a woman who uses birth control or is a single parent, fire or deny health benefits to LGBTQ employees, or refuse to interview anyone who doesn't regularly attend religious services or isn't the quote-unquote right religion. And I mean, I'm sure that people would argue that, oh, nobody would use it this way, but it's just
That's a
not
slippery slope.
true.
Yeah.
Right. Organizations find loopholes in policy all the time. That's
Yeah.
just a very clear one.
It's pretty disgusting, if you ask me. The idea that somebody could be discriminated against for these reasons based on their sexuality, based on what they're doing to their own body in the case of birth control or something like that, refusing to even interview somebody who doesn't regularly attend religious services, that's like refusing to interview somebody because they have a quote unquote more black name.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
And to be clear, this also has to do with the government handing out contracts to nonprofit organizations, that those nonprofit organizations, for government contracts, money that we're giving to them, is being used to hire people that are hiring in a discriminatory manner.
And this is a huge percentage of the American workforce. I believe that the figure was that it's about 1/5 of the nation's workforce is
Yes.
controlled by these federal
subcontractor.
contractors.
Yeah.
That is a huge pool of people that is now suddenly 20% of workers could now be facing discrimination based on what they believe or something that they do or just who they are.
Right. It causes a dangerous alliance with government and, religious groups. In reading this, I automatically thought about the I wrote this down, the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment, where it clearly states that a government or a government group or department cannot have any association or not represent or take favor towards a religious group or organization. But with this type of new rule, it kind of makes it seem that way, albeit it doesn't officially state a particular organization. It doesn't provide any type of monetary favors yet, or from what I see at least, or what we have yet to see if this continues. But it does take a new president for there to be more opportunity for these religious groups and organizations to skirt the relationship of, congressional government or employers that are working, or faith communities that are working for the benefit of the government, to have that leeway to further have their exemptions from tax exemptions, and to further enact more things that could further drive their agenda, whatever they're trying to achieve, with trying to have this type of new loophole relay to get towards that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think...
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, please. I don't want to interrupt.
No, the only thought was that it obviously does not make clear in the Establishment Clause of how this particular new rule can be addressed. So there certainly does need to be a close end to this if we're not wanting to revisit this type of thing again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, I would personally feel a lot less worried about this if we had a more diverse set of people controlling this. When they are by and large white Christian males, I don't love that. If we had a lot more people without religion, people who are LGBTQ, people who are Muslim, or literally anything else, I would feel more confident with loosening restrictions, because I do think that sometimes too many restrictions can get in the way. But when you're in such a precarious position as it is, it gets really tough. One sort of, I don't know, piece of hope, I guess, is that, of course, we do have a new president-elect coming into office, right? Biden just the other day was confirmed by the Electoral College, right? 100%. There were no faithless electors. We're all very excited. Kind of a funny thing to be excited about, but we have a new president coming in who has different values. He obviously is a religious person, but I mean, we can at least hope that he may listen to a little bit more reason and try to get this repealed.
I think he will.
Americans United actually prepared a document, the Agenda to Restore and Protect Religious Freedom, which
Yes.
outlines 10 things that Biden and Harris should do or should try to do in order to help. And that's a ton of things, from repealing the Muslim ban, just protecting and enforcing the Johnson Amendment as far as taxing or how taxes work for nonprofits and churches and whatnot. And one of those things is also to sign an executive order to help restore and protect the religious freedoms of basically everybody. Go back to the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And just kind of take it from there. We can hope. Hopefully they see this document and they go with it.
Yeah, and when I was looking at these 10 items, some of them I found somewhat disturbing in that had to be stated. Ensure people are not denied health care based on someone else's religion. Fund public schools, not private schools, with public funds. And to protect and enforce the Johnson Amendment. Yeah, I think these all are... I really do hope that the new administration will take a look at these 10 requirements. I don't know what to actually call them. Suggestions.
Yeah.
But and really take them to heart, because I think that what is trying to be put forth here really has some positive merit.
Yeah, I certainly have a bit more positive hope for it. I think it would be overturned and removed and not have any business of touching anything Trump has tried to put forth. It reminds me, I did a bit of reflection of when Obama was president. I don't recall if it was during his first or second term, but he did have a change of heart or a change of mind. And of course, he is a man of faith too. He had a change of heart in regards to same-sex marriage. At one point, he wasn't necessarily against it, but like how most, I guess, politicians that are wanting to be as moderate as possible would say, oh, civil unions are a bit more acceptable. We can do that. But he changed his language around that and tried to instill, across the board that, same-sex marriage, yeah, I'm for that. Despite the fact that he's a man that believes in a Christian God, and according to the Christian Bible, they're against that. So thankfully, we have put in a new administration, a new person, regardless faith or not, would stand for the right of the people as a whole and not for just the benefit of the self.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely hoping with the choosing of his running mate that is showing that he's got a larger view than just that. He's also a Catholic, so that has pluses and minuses as far as people in government. I think I have seen in the past that Catholics have a tendency to be able to separate those two. I don't know. It may be just I'm thinking about specific presidents, but I think the Catholic presidents that I can remember have been able to do that. So hopeful. So I'm hopeful.
Indeed.
I'm certainly hopeful, not just about this, but in general moving forward. I'm liking this. We're keeping like a hopeful tune today.
Yes.
A little bit more than
we can warm ourselves on the dumpster fire that was 2020 and move on into 2021.
I love it. I'm just feeling sort of hopeful moving towards 2021 in general. I mean, we're getting a new president who I think will align a lot better with what the majority of us think, not just us here, but based on the results of the election, right? Several million people, disparity. The majority of Americans think, hey, this is somebody who represents me. This is somebody who represents what I stand for. And that is something to be hopeful for, because the last 2020 has obviously been the creme de la creme of dumpster fires of the year. But every year since 2016, I think a lot of people have just felt this sinking feeling that, hey, maybe things won't be as bad as as we thought, and then things can't get too much worse, and then it just kept on going down and down until it culminated in 2020. So,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm liking this hopeful tone. I'm liking, hey, more non-religious representation in Congress, new president coming in. Hopefully, we'll have something to help combat this as we move forward and help undo some of the division that's happened in the last 4 years in general.
Yeah, I agree.
So we're going to move on to our third segment for the day. This is going to be a looking back segment.
Looking back.
And this segment is about an anthropologist. This is James George Frazer. He is an anthropologist, born 1854, died 1941. Really, he's an interesting guy. He had, if I can get to my right screen here, he studied as an anthropologist, as a cultural anthropologist. He studies myth and religion. That's what he became his study of expertise. Primarily, he didn't go to different places in the world, but he sent out questionnaires and looks at histories of religious figures and mailed out many questionnaires to missionaries and officials all over the globe. He was the first scholar to describe relations between myth and rituals. He envisioned things like the annual sacrifice of the death and the rebirth, the harvesting of the crop and the rebirth of the seeding and then bringing up of the next year's spring crop. His primary or most notable work was The Golden Bough. Is a study of ancient cults, rites, myths. It was showed the parallels in early Christianity to some of the older faiths. It's been studied and been interpreted by lots of different people in lots of different ways. It's a very interesting guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and what you mentioned there, the sort of comparing Christianity to some of these older faiths, what it found was that in a lot of scenarios, Christianity seems to, maybe not, definitely is, but appears to be the borrower, because it does share a lot of aspects with older traditions, older faiths, and at the very least, even if the stories aren't direct copies, you can see now in modern day, looking back, okay, there is definitely something fishy going on here. Like, just for example, with Mithra, his birthday commonly being dated to the 25th of December. That was a myth that predated Jesus, and it seems a little suspicious. So is it possible that the Jesus account was based on Mithra? Sure, there are other crossovers that I might touch on a little later, but is it also possible that just, hey, Christianity started as its own thing? Maybe it is its own genuine religion, but it did kind of it adopted a little bit from other religions. There was already a holiday, there was already a celebration going on, and maybe they got melded somewhere along the way. Just very interesting that some of the traditions that we might know and think about aren't necessarily rooted in the religion that we think about them with.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't think any idea is born in a vacuum. You always take from what's around you, definitely.
Oh, sure. Yes. And I believe this particular literary work, he definitely had a lot of people that he influenced in regards, especially stemming from The Golden Bough. For instance, a lot of people may be familiar with H.P. Lovecraft. He is known for a short story called The Call of Cthulhu. And I know and actually, it referenced to me this series I just watched that was on HBO called Lovecraft Country. Oh, it's so good. Have you guys seen it? It is
I've
really good.
seen the first episode. I need to watch all the rest.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. But of course, the actual writer in person, our H.P. Lovecraft, was a bit of a bigot and a racist. But besides that, the series is good. Go watch it. Sorry, no, not promoting that.
Come on, stay on topic, Jenna.
Staying on
What are you
topic.
doing?
Sorry, yes, but I'd say that because he did identify James as an influence based on the book The Golden Bow. And of course, for my own personal background in psychology and behavioral therapy and study, Sigmund Freud was also influenced when producing his work known as The Totem and Taboo. It's basically some literary structure around psychology and behavioral therapy as well. So these notable influences, and many others, of course, but those stood out most in my mind, carried heavy weight from what he developed in the volumes of The Golden Bow. And I think that it was very welcoming and good for him to create these comparative religion scripts or tellings of myths and religious stories and tales to allow people to critically think and make connections or correlations from various other religions and faiths that have again and again retold the same story, but with a different name or a different group of people or in a different language even. And for one additional thing in regards to his writing, I think it welcomed and influenced others to be open to pursuing truth and making connections with other religious theories and stories. Because really, how many times have we heard this retelling of Jesus in various other religions? There's very many references from various documentaries that I found on, stream channels where there has been the retelling of the birth of whatever god on this particular day, on this particular night, under this particular star, with the same three men that found the baby Jesus. And it's the same retelling of the same thing. And you would think people would make that connection and be like, this may not be true. But for a skeptic mind, we would make that connection. But obviously, it drew offense to the really hard faith believers. And he had a lot of criticism stemming from this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I mean, it's not super surprising. Sorry, Malty, to see that he got a lot of backlash for this. I mean, even today, I mean, we see a lot of backlash for people who question religion, who question, hey, is this real? Where did this come from? What are the origins, if not religious, or could this be from a different source than we originally thought? And as much as I'd love to think that hasn't always been the case, it was probably worse back then as well, when we had less findings, less science, less reliable methods to rely on. And I believe it was that at his funeral, it was specified that Frazer was not necessarily an atheist. I don't know if he ever identified as such, but a lot of people do kind of assume that. He did say his work, quote, strikes at the foundations of belief in which the hopes and aspirations of humanity through long ages have sought a refuge. So that's I guess a bit of why we're talking about him today. He wrote some very influential work, and also, hey, he's, if not one of us, getting there.
At best, maybe an agnostic.
Yeah.
At best.
Yeah.
At best, at worst.
For the time. But I mean, I really enjoyed reading some of the things that he was proposing, though not all of them have been borne out in studies going forward. But some of the things where he was talking about how the thought of animism, of physical magic, how what the way someone would plant a crop would influence the harvest of that crop. One that came to mind was not wearing clothing and burying your upper body while planting rice to make the husk of the rice in the future crop thinner.
Interesting.
He had an idea of animism to magic and how that kind of evolved into religion, and which he was thinking would then evolve into a society where science and reason was the driving force, from these earlier, more savage type thought processes.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting. I think he's a man of his time. Keep that in mind. It's not a short read, but for anyone that wants to take it on, I think there is a lot of interesting things there, and it's free on Gutenberg Press. So
Yeah, Project Gutenberg, fantastic resource with
Oh, yeah.
hundreds of thousands of free books.
Yeah.
And this is one of them, and it's pretty incredible. It's not a short read. I have not read much of it, but it's got a lot of really intricate stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To build
And,
on the positive. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
I wanted to just make sure to mention that we're going to have links to all the articles that we're talking about and reference material in the show notes. So please, if at any point in time you want to check us or you want to catch up, get a little more in depth, please check out the articles that are in the show notes.
Yeah.
So that being said, shall we move on to our third article?
I think we've got time.
Yeah,
Well,
I
certainly.
think we do too. So our
Yeah,
third
yes,
article, yeah,
I think-
Jena, were you gonna?
Yes, this was
Over.
particularly interesting. Yes, it related to let's see here. In regards to just because I will say I have had many discussions, at least with quite a few people that have had relationships stemming from one side being more religious and another side being non-religious. So this one kind of particularly caught my eye, and it's in reference to from The Guardian. It's a recent kind of summary of a study near completion known as How We Get Along. A 2-year-long study of diversity done by the Wolf Institute. So they were attempting to see the differences in faith and how those differences in faith drives more negative perceptions than ethnicity and nationalities. And so this survey, they surveyed a number of over, I would say, 11,000 adults in England and Wales. They identified from this sample pool of surveys that around 43%, and I quote, were comfortable with close relatives marrying a Muslim. So less than half. So the idea that if a close relative of yours, for instance, happens to marry a person that identifies as Muslim, the perception of negativity is stronger than it is more in the positive. And they thought that most people from the survey drew more positivity towards a close relative being married to someone that's just of a different race or ethnicity or nationality. And it was particularly hold on the focus of marriage. And that's why I wanted to kind of bring that little initial disclaimer up. But it's quite interesting to me, the references, many references of how, strongly that just the actual trigger word of mentioning Muslim or a person that practices the Muslim faith has such a stronger negative perception versus someone from another background of religion. So that was the main purpose of analyzing what this particular study was trying to conclude, or is actively still concluding.
Now, can I actually throw a wrench in that for just a second?
Sure.
What's really interesting, now I was actually, while I was researching our first article of the day about the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, I was on their Wikipedia page, and I saw a statistic that said 40% of people wouldn't vote for an atheist president. 60% of people say that they would. And that was referencing a Gallup poll. It said it was from 2019. I couldn't find that one quickly, but I did find a Gallup poll from 2015. And I dug into that a little bit. And interestingly enough, actually, They're right. 40% of people would not vote for an atheist for president. 38% of people would not vote for a Muslim for president. It's actually a higher percentage of people that wouldn't vote for an atheist than wouldn't vote for a Muslim. Now, obviously, this is voting for president. This isn't quite the same as marriage. They're a little bit different, but still, I think that it sort of tracks. I mean, it's the same type of statistic. It's in the same realm, at least, and we're actually seeing that atheism and Muslims have a very similar level of distrust and dislike in the eyes of the Americans. And, you know, it does kind of go on to break it down. And we can have this link down in our description as well. It does break it down as well by Democrats, Independents, Republicans, and also by age. And it does a pretty good job of laying things out in different groups. And the statistics do get a little bit rough sometimes, especially when you start looking at some of the older age ranges, and not to offend anybody, but some of the Republicans, where you just don't like it. Now, I will say, both atheists and Muslims do have socialists beat. A lot fewer people would vote for a socialist than an atheist. But, you know, we're second to last.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back to the study. I found it interesting that in the polls that they were taking, ethnic diversity was appreciated and was found to be agreeable to over 50% of those people that were polled. When asked if ethnic diversity is good for British society, 53% said yes. If ethnic diversity is good for your local community, 63% said yes. It's not that there is they don't. It seems like the culture is okay with having a diverse population. When it comes to religious diversity, though, not ethnic diversity, that's when things start to slide downhill. And that's where it comes back to, would you want your sister, brother, friend be in a relationship with this? And I found that quite interesting. What do you two think might be driving forces for that difference, where it's okay to be friends with someone that is not the same religion as you, but don't try to date them?
For me, and I'm gonna kind of speak from personal experience, I have been told since I've been younger that, you know, in the eyes of my family and in the eyes of my community, I would not be understood fully if my partner was not of my same skin color, and of course not of my same faith. So that automatic perception, as I had kind of pointed to in the beginning, when you identify, when you self-identify the sameness in that, that automatically grants you more privilege over automatically having that connection. It's not always the absolute case, but I guess it just keeps with the norm and keeps with not everything being, you know, chaotic, because, you know, okay, he's of the same race, he's of the same religion, so it's fine. Everyone's comfortable. It's keeping the comfortability, it's keeping with the tradition or culture or what have you. And I think that when you, through marriage, you're proposing some issues, some serious problems. And it's not so much a conversation about a willingness to tolerate each other, right? Because we can learn to tolerate one another. It's to address the epic contrast of worldviews, how you would approach a problem within a marriage, how you would approach raising your children. You know, one spouse may want to have their children more in church, the other one doesn't care for that, obviously. And it poses a danger of disconnect. So the drive, and I'm going to actually quote a Bible verse that popped in my head. It's Second Corinthians, 6:14. And as my Sunday school teacher would say, I'm going to read from the King James Version because that's the only right version. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers, meaning you are unable to be bound and perform together if you're not the same. So that causes friction, that causes trouble, that causes controversy. I mean, I don't necessarily abide by that, but there can be pretty valid arguments for not really identifying with a spouse, with a friend, coworker, what have you, if you don't have similar worldviews or approaches to things. It could cause friction.
Hmm.
Sure, you can tolerate each other, but there are obvious problems in that.
I've got another theory, and that is the theory of religious economy.
Hmm.
This was proposed by some sociologists, socioanthropologists, specifically William Sims Bridge and Rodney Stark. And they see um, religion as a market type product and the faithful as consumers of this product. And so if you have say a union that is going to create more children, more consumers, there's going to be only a certain amount of slices of that pie that can go to each of those religions. So if you are keeping within the faith and you are marrying within the faith, then your children are more likely to be within your own faith. And that way, all of that, they will be consumers of the specific religion of the two parents, most likely. So I thought that was really kind of interesting in looking at it in a market value type of way of why this might be
Mhm.
a way that when I was reading some of the articles from Christianity Today and maybe the BBC had one about interfaith relationships, they're all talking about how the two people are trying to understand one another, how the two people in the relationship, how communication is important, and how worldview, and I think it's maybe a little bit of a, for some people, I'm sure that religion is a large part of their worldview. For some religious people, it's not as important,
Mhm.
but that those worldviews can. I do know some of my friends are in a mixed marriage, in that it's one is religious, the other is not, and they seem to be stable. I'm sure, as stable as any other. 50%, I guess, is where we're at, have been for a while.
Mhm.
But yeah, the theory of religious economy was kind of came to mind when I was reading into this, and showing that there might be other things that are have more to do with the monetary value of
Mhm.
instilling a belief system.
It's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. And I think that based on my own experience, that I don't necessarily have any experience to back up the theory of religious economy. I tend to be more aligned with Jenna's thoughts on this. I think it mostly comes down to culture. And in a lot of cases, that could just be as simple as family culture. I'm married, and I'm married to a woman of color whose father is a pastor. And as far as things go, we were a little bit worried at the start where, hey, how will I as an atheist fit in with her family?
Hmm.
Are they going to be able to relate to me? Are they going to accept me? And how is that going to work? Because of course, when you're marrying somebody, when you're in a relationship with somebody and things are getting serious, it's not 100% about the other person, because you are gaining a new family completely when you end up tied together in a partnership like that. And I think that the thing in particular, to tie it back to the article about how religious intolerance is a bigger divider than or a bigger cause of friction than race, people know that you can't change your race, right? I can't just be somebody who I'm not. I can't be born again. Haha. But But people can change their mind. People can be convinced. People can hear the truth, right? So if somebody goes home and they bring home somebody who is, say, African American, maybe a family doesn't necessarily approve of that, but if it's somebody that makes their child happy, hey, we can accept that. If somebody goes home and they bring home an atheist or they bring home a Muslim, well, at this point, there is more on the line. This could be, for a Christian family, this could be about, hey, your eternal soul, your husband's eternal soul. There's more to it. And at that point, it's a matter of, hey, this is something that they can change. We can't hold it against them. I would hope that they're a different race. We can hold it against them that they're a different religion. We can hold it against them that they don't want to go to church with us. We can hold it against them for this and that and the other thing. I didn't personally experience any of this, but I can definitely tell you that, hey, this is kind of where I fall. This is where I see could be the biggest friction point, because it's not something that's out of their control anymore. It's something that is in their control. It's something that they have a choice about, whether they believe or even if they just play along. And that could be a driving factor, I think, knowing that the possibility for change is there, and that means that they're either unwilling, unable, whatever it might be.
Yes, you definitely acknowledge my other points exactly with that, as far as you cannot make changes to unmodifiable variables, meaning I can't change the way my color of my skin looks. I can't change the way I appear to you or what I have grown up on. Yes, I am influenced by my family's political views or my family's faith. Those are modifiable variables. But, and yes, to your point, is to keep in the spirit of positivity. I hope that is, and I agree, that is not necessarily always the issue, where there can be problems where one spouse is a non-believer and the other spouse is a believer. You can find those couplings that work very well together, even without the influence of the extra family. Those couples try to work out what they can do for the benefit of their children or just the benefit of their household in general. Just another point of reference, this kind of dialing back and removing the aspect of marriage. Another curious thing, and it may be a little bit obvious, that the study points out the most, is the trigger word, Muslim. Why is it that this particular faith, amongst all the others, Christianity, because they have their hangups, Catholic faith, they have their hangups too. All other faiths, I mean, so many other faiths have their hangups, have their wrongs in history that has been done to oppress people and, enslave, things like that. But Muslim tends to be the number one trigger for majority of the surveyors. And again, it could be obvious to why.
That's well, and when we're talking about the England and Wales, the one of the things that I took from the study is those non-Muslim people that were interviewed found that the increase in religious diversity was going too quickly for a lot of people's liking. And I think that might be that an influx of Muslims is maybe somewhat driving this, and that they see it as somewhat of a threat, where, the Catholics and the Protestants have been fighting forever, but now there's a third party that they can both, gang up on.
Right. Yeah. Given the region and the demographic of how this group of people were surveyed and the location and everything, it does make sense based on the history and based on, the surrounding countries where a lot of, immigrants or traveling people dive into these areas where, you may see an increase in certain faiths, certain people, certain nationalities, and what have you. So that does make sense.
Mm-hmm. Anything else that you wanted to bring up on this topic, or?
I don't think so. I feel like we've hit a good point with this. Just there are a lot of different reasons that people might be prejudiced against each other. And I think that my main takeaway is that, well, maybe we shouldn't be. I mean, I know that that's kind of obvious to us. All of us are going to have some amount of subconscious bias that we can't really control. But I think that generally what we want is a more equitable world where people don't have to be afraid to be religious or non-religious in front of other people, where people don't have to be afraid to be another race in front of other people.
Yeah.
I really hope that we are trying to move towards that world and that we are helping to build that sort of world.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I saw in the study just one last thing when they're talking about friendship, and one thing that I found to be very a positive thing is when it comes to tackling prejudice, they were saying that friendship matters, and it works. Um, so if you can show yourself as not the angry atheist, you know, try to live your life to show the idea of positive atheism. I think people overall will respond positively back.
Yeah.
That actually reminds me, I know I said I didn't have anything else to say, but that specific thought reminded me. Do you know who Daryl Davis is?
The name's familiar.
Yeah.
Daryl Davis, he's a man who he's a black man, and he's a guy who's actually engaged with members of the Ku Klux Klan. He collects Klan robes by deconverting people. I think he's collected over 200 robes.
Yeah.
And his strategy has been to sit down with them, to talk with them, to show them, hey, look, you hate me because of the color of my skin. I'm really not a bad guy. Have a conversation with me. Spend some time with me. If you still think you're justified in hating me, great. But if you can't actually identify that, maybe you're wrong. And it appears that that's been fairly successful. And I just keeping with the theme, I've always thought that that's a really uplifting story, and that's something that, hey, we should just call that out. Great work, and similar sort of thing to what you were talking about. Friendship works, making the human connection works.
Yeah. So to end this up, let me just ask you two, are you doing anything to keep yourself sane for this holiday season?
I am on vacation from work. That keeps me
Very
sane.
exciting. Very exciting.
That is exciting. I'm not going anywhere because I don't want to travel. But usually
Smart
when
and responsible.
right, yes, being very responsible. I'm a nurse. I got to represent myself well, but a well-deserved vacation. It's obviously for healthcare workers, it's been a trying year. For all of us in general, it's been a trying year. But a lot of healthcare workers, myself included, at one point earlier in the summer, have put our lives at risk to try and tackle this effort of testing and making sure people are keeping safe and going over precautions and safeties and what have you. So along those lines, along some point in time, I gave up a couple weeks of my vacation just to work more hours and put myself in the front of a hospital in a COVID drive-through to shove a stick in people's noses to test them for COVID. And it was hard work, but it was good work. It was really good work, and I'm proud of it. But I deserve this vacation now. So
You deserve it a lot more than I do. I've got a couple weeks of vacation as well, most provided by my company, which I'm very thankful for. But I am also taking some vacation time so that my vacation aligns with my wife's. We're going to spend some time together. This is why I think we might have time to decorate the house, even though we've been too busy to do it so far. Hang out with the dog and the cat. Nothing huge. All of our family is back on the East Coast, and as much as I would love to see them, we flew out to see them last year. It's just not safe this year. So we're probably going to do some sort of virtual get together. We'll be doing lots of virtual stuff with our friends, whether that's games or hanging out or some sort of, I think two of them are doing like a bake off. They're doing Christmas cookies or something.
that's fun.
That should be fun, except I'm like, man, but I don't get to eat any of them. What's the point? You're so far away.
Smell it through the virtual call.
Yeah. I'll have them. I'll need to turn on the smell-o-vision.
Yeah, there you go.
Have the 4D experience.
Yeah.
That's fun.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to try to do some technical consultation, trying to get. Well, I just need to be able to get Mom to be able to do a Zoom call so we can have one of those Christmas get-togethers over Zoom with all the family. And,
That's nice.
but it'll be good. It'll
That's
be good.
good.
It'll be nicer that I'll be able to mute other people instead of having to leave the room.
Mm-hmm.
So
I will say one little quote that my mother told me the other day. And, with the drive of cases and everything, us going through COVID, us potentially soon getting our own vaccines now, yay. With the hoopla over that, and, all of us missing our families that lived long distance. My mother had told me this, hold out for now. You may not be with family now, and you may not be able to travel or see them or hug them or be in person or what have you, but hold out for this year so that you'll continue to have many years thereafter once we get over this.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. Here's to many more years. Not just the three of us, but our families. Hopefully everybody stays as healthy as they can be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So today we have covered from the Friendly Atheist and Hemet Meta, there are now more atheists in state and federal office than ever before. That was November 21st, 2020. From America's United for the Separation of Church and State, Americans United denounces Trump's administration rule that allows federal contractors to use religion to discriminate against workers. And from The Guardian, religious intolerance, quote, is bigger cause of prejudice than race, unquote, says report in The Guardian from Harriet Sherwood, and that was on November 15th, 2020. Again, all of these will be in the show notes for our listeners or watchers to read. So with that, any final ideas, thoughts from Kurt, from Jena?
Stay safe, everyone. Just, stay at home. It's cold outside anyway, so just stay safe, stay at home, be amongst whoever you live, and just, let's keep our distance and we'll get through this.
I really like that message, but I feel like it's a little stale. I feel like we give that message every week. Can we do something different? I mean, like,
yes.
Hey, come on. Let's do something a little different at least. Come on. We talked about happy stuff this week. Let's instead of like the stay safe, that we don't want people to not be safe, of course, but let's just be positive. Let's look forward to something. We've got a vaccine coming. Don't stay safe. Grab safety. Shoot it into your arm. Get it.
Yeah.
All the other things that are coming too.
For you, those people that can get vaccinated. For me, those people that can't, please get the jab in the arm. I agree.
Right.
And for me, I've got a call to action. Calling back to our first article, if it is safe for you to do so, make your secular voice heard. Talk to your congresspeople and let them know that they appreciate secular values being shown. Because if they think that the secular people are the ones that are going to reelect them, you might hear a little more secular things coming out of their mouths.
Mm-hmm. Further progress this. Yeah, good.
So, okay, all of you out there in television land or YouTube land, please like and subscribe. Join our Facebook group. Join our Discord, tiny.cc.aca Discord. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com, the nonprofits. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like, what we got right, what we got wrong. Send us an email, non-profits at atheist-community.org. Thank you all for listening and watching us. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Jena, for helping me on this first time on the right-hand seat. I hope I didn't blow it too much. And thank
Always
you all
happy to be here.
for and thanks for the ACA for giving me the opportunity to do this. I really, really appreciate it. So thank you all, and goodbye.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.